Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1328B, and today's date is July 10th, 2017, and the title of the episode is, The Bad Guys Are Now Being Outed as More Evidence Pours In. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, we've been following Obamacare since the beginning, and we see that the co-ops, well, they are going bankrupt. They're losing billions and billions of dollars. And I saw in the corporate media, they're talking about Obamacare, and they're saying this is what it looks like when insurance systems normalize. You mean like Radio Shack is normalizing right now, Macy's is normalizing right now, all the stores that are going bankrupt, they're normalizing right now. I mean, they throw out these words to make you believe that, yes, this is the way it's supposed to be. This is what it looks like when something is normalizing. Things go completely bankrupt. We lose billions and billions of dollars, and there are less people signing up for insurance. Now, Gallup ShareCare survey came out, and this serves as a kind of early indicator to let us know how the insurance industry is doing and who's signing up and who's not signing up, and specifically looking at Obamacare. And what they're reporting right now is that there is 2 million less people that actually signed up to Obamacare. It's amazing. When Obama leaves office and there's no one manipulating the numbers, bringing in Medicaid, getting rid of these individuals, pumping that up a little bit. We can see the true numbers of what it is really doing. And the entire system, it's not normalizing. It's imploding on itself because it was never built. It was never designed. It was never created to be a benefit to us, the people, where we would have great health insurance, where we would have low deductibles, where we would have low premiums. It wasn't designed that way. It was designed to help certain groups like the insurance industry. It was to bring in profits to other groups. It was bring in taxes to the government, and it was to penalize anyone that didn't want to go along with what they wanted. That's what that was all about. And we can see from another Gallup survey, and this was released today, that the top financial concerns, according to this Gallup survey, among the people of the U.S. is healthcare costs, which shows you that people are very concerned because their premiums are continually moving up and up and up. Under this is too much debt, not enough money to pay debts. Yes, because people are losing jobs. They're not getting the raises. And the other one is lack of money, low wages. Now, isn't this odd that this Gallup survey that was taken among American people, that these are the top financial concerns, where it has to do with jobs, receiving money, healthcare, everything that the people care about. And what has the government done to help the people? What has the central bank done to help the people? Absolutely nothing. What have they done to help themselves? Quite a bit, because you could see how they're living compared to the rest of the country. Now, as soon as the G20 meeting was over, it looked like the deep state and their mouthpieces, the corporate media, they were prepared and ready for a major story to show Russian collusion once again. Now, the New York Times reported that Donald Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., together with Paul Manafort and Jared Kushner, they met with a Russian lawyer who was connected to the Kremlin back on June 9th of 2016, shortly after Trump was assured of the Republican nomination. Now, the New York Times, they followed up with a new article, one which seeks to explain the one thing that was missing from the original New York Times article, the motive behind the said meeting. And the New York Times came out and they said, yes, Trump Jr. met with the Russian lawyer, with the other individuals, because this Russian lawyer, who was attached to the Kremlin, promised damaging information about Hillary Clinton. Now, it is unclear whether the Russian lawyer, Natalia, I'm not even going to try to pronounce her last name, actually produced the promised compromising information about Clinton. Now, she is saying she never acted on behalf of the Russian government. she said, and never discussed any of these matters with any representative of the Russian government. More importantly, she recalled that after about 10 minutes, either Kushner or Manafort completely walked out. In other words, the meeting was, as Trump Jr. suggested, a waste of time. But the punchline is this, that there was no smoking gun whatsoever. First, the meeting took place in early June. Now let's think about this. June of 2016. 1 month before Russia was supposedly hacking the DNC server and Podesta's emails were spread out all over the internet. So right there, that doesn't even make sense. Now, if this indeed was this blockbuster meeting, why wasn't Trump himself present at this meeting? Why was he absent from the meeting? Now, a little bit of investigation exposes something very important. Now, this is coming from Trump's legal team. And they're saying that they investigated into this. And we have learned that the person who sought the meeting is associated with Fusion GPS, a firm which, according to public records, was retained by Democrat operatives to develop opposition research on the president, which commissioned the phony Steele dossier. And it looks like maybe someone was setting up this meeting to trap Trump. Now, Trump Jr., he is saying that he has no problem testifying in front of the Senate Intel Committee, and it looks like, well, this might happen. Actually, this is a good thing. Let's get all of this out there. Let's show that there's nothing there, and let's dig deeper into where this Russian attorney came from. Did anyone pay this person? Are there other connections that need to be explored? And will we find other things? Now, the Kremlin came out, Russia came out and said, listen, we don't know who this Russian lawyer is, first of all. And we don't keep track of all these Russian lawyers. And this Russian lawyer, we have no clue who this individual is and how they are connected. So we're having a problem here in believing this story. Now, it looks like this story that the corporate media is running, it seems like they don't want to report on the real story. Now, what is the real story? Well, The Hill is reporting, in addition to the leaked memos, Comey also leaked classified information in direct violation of the FBI rules and regulation. Now, Comey just found himself in trouble, just like Clinton. But who's going to protect him? Because he was there to protect her. Who's protecting Comey right now? And it looks like Comey is about to be investigated for the exact same thing which he absolved Hillary Clinton of doing last summer. Comey broke his own agency rules. He ignored the same security protocols that he publicly criticized Hillary Clinton for doing in the 2016 presidential election. And we see that Comey right now, by testifying in front of the Senate Intelligence Panel, he kind of incriminated himself because he gave this memo to a friend. This memo is not his to hand out, because if you look at the FBI policy, all information acquired in connection with my official duties with the FBI and all official material to which I have access remain the property of the United States of America. And that an agent will not reveal by any means any information of material from or related to FBI files or any other information acquired by virtue of my official employment to any unauthorized recipient without prior official written authorization by the FBI. Now, of course, Trump came out and he said, Comey's leaking of classified information to the media, this is so illegal. Again, unmasking, leaking confidential information, it is completely illegal. Now, what's even better about all of this is that they're trying to use the same exact excuse that Clinton did. Because Daniel Richman, who was an individual who received the leaked memos, at least one of the leaked memos, claims the memo that was leaked to him by the FBI director, well, it didn't have any markings on it. It didn't say classified on it. Now, this is ridiculous because it's not the markings on the memo. It is what is contained within the memo. And they're trying to use the same exact strategy that Hillary Clinton used. So it's not the marking that renders a document classified. It's the content. Comey knows this. He's been in the intelligence arena. He was the head of the FBI. He knows this. And he's trying to use this to make everyone think that it needs a classified marking on top. And if you notice, the corporate media, they're not looking at this whatsoever. They're looking at Trump Jr., who spoke to a Russian lawyer. Who cares? This is a nothing burger once again. Now, very interestingly, there has been new research that shows the Guccifer 2.0 files. They were not hacked by Russia, which we know. They were copied locally. Now, there was an independent researcher known as the Forensicator, which suggests that the files eventually published by Guccifer 2.0, well, they were initially downloaded by a person with physical access to the computer, possibly connected to the internal DNC network. The individual most likely used a USB drive to copy the information. So what did the Forensicator find? Well, they found that the files that were eventually published by Guccifer 2.0 were first copied to a system located in the Eastern time zone. Now, with this conclusion, supported by the observation that the zip file times after adjustment to East Coast time fall into the range of the file times in the other compressed files in the RAR files. Now, this suggests that the information eventually published by Guccifer 2.0 was not obtained by Russian hackers because the time zones in both are on the East Coast. They're Eastern Standard Time, which tells us that it was not Russia. And we can see right now that their entire Russian hacking theory, it's really starting to fall apart. And if someone could actually take a look at the server, maybe like the FBI, Homeland Security, maybe the local police, or anyone else except for CrowdStrike, they would see that this server was never hacked. So what we're seeing right now is that Comey is in trouble. There is evidence that's coming out that he was a leaker, which we know. He's leaking classified information. And again, the world is starting to hear about this. Of course, the corporate media doesn't want to report on this, but we're going to hear a lot more things about what is really happening with the DNC because there's more and more people questioning, looking into it. And you can see that all these bad guys who are within government, all the ones who have been breaking the laws, well, the evidence is starting to pour out. And as we learn more and more, we can see that this is one gigantic web of these criminals doing all of these things and trying to cover up everything that they're doing. But guess what? It's going to catch up with them. And we can see it already is. It's getting worse and worse as time goes on. Now, after Trump was at the G20 meeting, he said that Russia and the United States were going to work together on a cybersecurity unit. And of course, we had Lindsey Graham, we had Marco Rubio, we had McCain, all these individuals coming out saying this is the dumbest idea ever because, remember, they're against Russia. They're neocons. They want war with Russia. This can't be. And we can see that Trump right now, he's kind of backpedaling on what was discussed in the G20 meeting with Putin. And he needs to stand strong with this because it's showing the world with Putin that, listen, we can work together. We can have a cybersecurity force working together to stop all this hacking. Russia does not have to be the enemy of the United States, which it really isn't. I mean, Russia has been extending their hand over and over and over again. And Paul Craig Roberts is out there, and he does bring up a very good point that Trump is going to have a very difficult time in improving relations with Russia because the government, all the neocons, the deep state, the central bank, and the U.S. media, which is the mouthpiece for all these individuals, well, they oppose improved relations with Russia. And this is going to be very, very difficult. And he points out, like I pointed out on Sunday, Nikki Haley is a neocon. Tillerson is another problem. These individuals always counter what he's trying to do. When he says improve relations with Russia, well, Tillerson comes out, we're increasing sanctions on Russia if Russia doesn't withdraw their troops from Ukraine. Nikki Haley is out there saying, no, Russia is our enemy. So whatever is happening here, we still have these problems of these individuals. These individuals need to be removed. But one thing is happening is that this Senate bill on these Russian sanctions, well, the House is saying, listen, we need to modify this bill. We need to give the president leeway if he wants to negotiate any of these sanctions or not implement these sanctions. And we can see right now that this sanction bill, it's really not moving anywhere at this point because it looks like it's frozen in the House because they want to give the president the option to do different things with Russia. And it looks like Trump wants to have a relationship with Russia, which would be a good thing for the United States. Now, we know that Nikki Haley was out there and the neocons, the deep state, the central bank, where they were saying that North Korea fired a ballistic missile. Now, during the UN draft that the United States was creating, Russia said, listen, you need to include the data so we can compare it to our radar systems to see if it matches. Because they didn't say it right off the bat. I had a funny feeling that their data shows that it was not a ballistic missile. Now, the U.S. is not including any data showing that it was a ballistic missile. Russia has said that North Korea did not fire an intercontinental ballistic missile in the recent test, even though the U.S. is saying that they did. They're saying that their radar station deployed in the Irkutsk region monitored the launch of the 14 medium-range ballistic missile from North Korea, which flew a distance of 510 kilometers in 14 minutes, reaching an altitude of 535 kilometers before landing in the Sea of Japan. And they detailed the trajectory, they monitored the flight path, and they said this is not a ballistic missile, this is a medium-range missile. Now, this is very interesting, and we can see why Russia said we would like to have the data showing that this is a ballistic missile, because they had something completely different. But again, the neocons, the deep state, they don't want that part out there because they're trying to push their agenda. Now, China, they are reducing all military contacts with North Korea. They're complying with the UN resolution, and they want to show that, yes, they are on board with the world, showing that we condemn what North Korea is doing right now. And we see at this point that, yes, China and Russia, they're going to be implementing their plan to try to stop what is happening right now. Now, Tillerson, he is out in the Ukraine right after the G20 meeting. He met with Poreshenko, and he quickly went after Russia, saying, listen, that the fundamental U.S. goal in the region is to restore Ukraine to its pre-revolutionary size, which means we want Crimea back and the southeastern area. Now remember, the U.S. created this coup d'etat, and the southeastern people and the people in Crimea decided they didn't want to be a part of what was happening. Now again, we have Tillerson, part of the neocon party. We have Nikki Haley, part of the neocon party, where you can see every time something happens, well, they resort back to their neocon approach. And what's very interesting is that during the G20 meeting, when Trump met Putin and they spoke to each other, only Lavrov and Tillerson were within this meeting. Now, Trump kept pretty much everyone else out, all the neocons and everyone else, because he wanted to make sure what happened there was correct in what was let out. Now, Tillerson was in there, and he would be the only other person that knew what happened in there. And if anything comes out, Trump automatically knows it is Tillerson. So he kind of set him up in a way. Now we see that the King Salman, he's to become the first Saudi monarch to visit Russia. The trip is expected this month, and they're going to be talking about many different things here. And we need to go back to June 2nd to understand what has happened since that period of time. Russia's largest oil producer, Rosneft, and the kingdom's national oil company, Aramco, well, they announced that they would look into joint investments in Saudi Arabia. The parties discussed possible ways of cooperating in Asia, including Indonesia and India, as well as other markets. Now, cooperation in Asia between the world's two biggest oil exporters would be unprecedented. Saudi Arabia, via its oil giant Aramco, has openly stated to be interested in global gas investment opportunities starting in Russia's Siberian region. Now, Russian gas giant Lukoil has revealed that it will also consider marketing oil alongside Saudi Aramco. Another Russian oil company, Tatneft, has announced it is open for cooperation with Saudi Arabia. So we can see that these Middle Eastern countries, they understand what is happening in the world today, especially with the U.S., and they're moving closer and closer to Russia and China. And we can see it with Qatar, we can see it with Saudi Arabia, we can see it with all these different countries because they are protecting themselves for when the dollar ceases to exist. Now we see out in Syria, well, things are peaceful right now. There's a ceasefire going on. We also see something very interesting. Al-Qaeda, Al-Sham, well, there's a lot of infighting going on between the terrorist groups. And we can see right now that one of the terrorist groups, Al-Sham, is saying, listen, we're not going to be part of the fighting anymore. We're just going to leave. We also see out in Damascus, the rebel lines, they are shattered following a Syrian army breakthrough. So what we're seeing right now is that all these terrorist groups, the moderate rebels, the Syrian Democratic Forces, whatever is happening out in Syria, it looks like Russia, the Syrian army, they are pushing through and basically eliminating these terrorist groups. But we could see that the deep state, their plan right now is to set up more military bases in Syria to try to establish a zone where this is going to be controlled by the Kurds, by the Syrian Democratic Forces, which is a group which they created, where they said, okay, here we have a new group. It's made up of Syrians, so you can't say that we don't have a group that has no Syrians in it. Because everyone started to point out that the Free Syrian Army had less than 10% of Syrians in the group. So they created a group with more Syrians, and then they created another group because they're not on any of the terrorist lists, and they're showing that, yes, these are all grassroots groups that the deep state is creating, which makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, it's coming to the point where it's getting absolutely ridiculous. We see in Iraq, well, the Islamic State, they're almost completely gone in this country. And what's very interesting is out in the corporate media, we see headline news that even though the Islamic State is gone, that doesn't mean terror is completely gone. They're trying to figure out a way to keep this going, to stay in these areas. Because remember, once the Islamic State, once Al-Qaeda, once Al-Sham, once all these terrorist groups are gone, guess what? There's no reason for the U.S. to be there. But this was never the reason they were there in the first place. The reason they were there in the first place is to keep control of the entire area, to keep puppet governments in this area, to keep control of their natural resources. Empire building. That was the real reason. Had nothing to do with the terrorists, because we know the terrorists were the paid mercenary armies of the deep state. So what we're seeing right now is that everything is falling apart around them. And as we can see, there's a lot more evidence that is coming out slowly but surely. And eventually, we're going to start seeing people go to jail. It might not be in the quantity that we want, But we're going to see certain individuals taking the fall for certain crimes. Maybe the first one is Comey. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.